This is the way some people buy stocks. They meet with their investment broker, he gives them some advice, they give him some commission, and he takes care of the transaction. But nowadays, you can do all of this at home by yourself on your computer if you have the right software. Today, we'll take a look at investment software on this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by a grant from AFIPS, the American Federation of Information Processing Societies. AFIPS, sponsors of OAC 86, the nation's leading conference on business technology. For conference information, call 800-OAC-1986. Exploring today's business solutions. Additional funding is provided by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte. Byte's detailed technical articles on new hardware, software, and languages cover the latest in microcomputer technology worldwide. Byte, the international standard.
Welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stuart Chaffee, and this is Gary Kildall. Gary, this is a game called The Wizard of Wall Street. It's a stock market simulation game, and I can call up research reports in a particular industry, like the airline industry there, for example. When I get all the information I need and all the funny money I have that I'm going to play the game with here, I can actually go right to the big board here. You can see the stock exchange ticker tape going across the top, the various stock market indexes to tell me what's going on, news events that are affecting the market. This is a game, but more and more real investors are using their personal computers to manage their portfolios, to actually conduct transactions from their homes. Would you trust a computer to tell you how to invest your money?
I think I'd like to see the results of the advice. But if we all followed the advice of a single program, it wouldn't lead to a very interesting market. There's a lot of value, I think, in the online services, the instant stock trading, the historical information about stocks, the current stock values, things of that sort. I'd use that. And I'd also use programs like this one, the simulation, to learn about the terminology.
Gary, today we're going to take a look at the latest and hottest in new investment software. One of the things Personal Computers has done is make it possible for just about anybody to be a knowledgeable investor. And we'll start out by taking a look at one investor who might not be in the market at all if not for computers.
John Eckridge is not the typical example of a full-time stock market investor. He doesn't wear pinstripes, keep voluminous notebooks, or yell himself hoarse on the trading floor. His toolkit today consists of a portable stock quote receiver and a personal computer. John gave up his traditional brokerage practice when he realized that he could invest for himself at home, freed from the burdens of clients and commuting, in exchange for a few other responsibilities. While he hasn't cut all communication lines to his full-service broker, John does most of his research at the computer, which gathers data from online services, tracks and updates the stocks in his portfolio, and charts the performance of selected stocks over days or years. About the only other tools on his desk are a newspaper and the Quotrec, a real-time stock quote radio receiver. The online services cost about $250 a month. In exchange, John gets a real-time link to the trading floor, a very individualized service, and just a few regrets.
I think when you work alone and you work in a home and you don't have coworkers around you, some of that feedback is missing. And that's one of the reasons that I still have a standard broker.
Buying stocks from your living room may lack some of the excitement of Wall Street, but it features some special attractions of its own.
Okay, Nick, what do you think?
Joining us now in the studio is Charles Spear, the chairman and CEO of Spear's Securities Incorporated in Los Angeles. And also with us is John Frierson, the president of Investek here in San Francisco. Gary?
Chuck, how are computers really helping a small investor nowadays?
Well, the computer, in a way, is the ATM machine for the brokerage industry because it puts in the hands of the consumer a wealth of information never there before, and it gives him the access to the market so that he can do an automated trade.
Okay, now you have an example of just an automated trade going on here, right?
Well, I have the Securities software, which on the main menu shows a variety of things. It shows that you can access quotes, that you can look at your portfolio, which is posted up to the second, that you can look at your tax records, and when you're ready to do a trade, that you can enter the trade detail, get the trade done, and see it posted.
Okay, Chuck, let's start from the beginning. Suppose I'm interested in investing in some stock in the computer field, and I'm thinking about deciding between Apple, for example, and Lotus. And I want to go use this software to try to get an answer as to which would be the better investment right now. How would it help me?
All right, the system carries a database of about 3,300 companies, and you can compare 50 different items, a little more than 50 items, in a variety of ways, company by company, industry group, etc. So we're going to go in and we're going to ask to do that.
Lotus. Okay, now we're online now, right, to your service?
Yes, we are. We're online to Source Telecomputing in McLean, Virginia.
Okay. And you're asking it to do what right now?
Well, I'm asking it to move from the main menu and go to information that's provided to the system by Media General in Richmond. Media General keeps the financial information, and there is their screen.
Okay.
And we are saying to it, we're interested in doing some stock analysis. It will come back after the necessary lawyer's screens that say this
Warning
is...
you, don't sue me if you lose money. Okay.
Then we're going, it's asked us to put stock symbols in. We'll ask it for Apple.
Okay, and Lotus, I want to see.
Okay. And now it's going
So it's pulling out the Apple file right now?
It's pulling the Apple file. It's going to give us another of those exclamation points. And we'll tell it Lotus. If we happen to want to do an industry group, we need just put the number of that group in, and there's a directory here.
Okay, now,
and that's satisfactory.
So what kind of information can we get out of this now?
Well, first of all, let us say that I'm interested in knowing how these securities have performed recently. I want to know what happened to them last week, one against the other, and I want to know how they've historically performed. It's asking me whether I'm interested in seeing them ranked in percentage order. With just a few, it isn't necessary.
Okay.
And it tells me that last week, Apple was up a bit, Lotus was down. The last 4 weeks, the last 13 weeks, the last 52 weeks year to date.
Now, how would you do a transaction on the stock?
Well, if I want to do a transaction...
Well, can I stop you before you get to that? Suppose I want to know what the insiders are doing in these two companies.
Okay, what we want to do there is, that happens to be on screen 11. So we've asked it for screen 11. It wants to know whether I'm interested in ranking those, and I've said no. So it comes back and says, 45,000 shares of Apple were purchased by insiders in the last reporting period. 84,000 shares of Lotus were sold.
Okay.
Now, you asked about doing a trade. What we want to do that is move off of this aspect of the system and back into Invest.
So I can take that information and go right ahead and do a transaction now.
Well, a couple of things you can do. You can ask for Wall Street's research opinion and see what other brokers think of the stock. You can ask for my own opinion because it's carried here as well. But we will want to go to 3, Spear Securities Trading Online. The thing that's important to point out is that this technology supports a market that operates 24 hours a day. The screen will ask the same series of questions that your broker on the telephone will ask. Give the information, push the return key. Within 30 seconds, you'll have a trade. And if it's midnight, you will still get it as long as it's a New York Stock Exchange listed stock.
Hey, John, how does this affect the local broker?
Well, I think the local broker to some extent is threatened these days because what's happened is the electronic revolution has put in the hands of an individual investor the information that in the past was the exclusive area of expertise of the individual broker. And so what you have are people today who are shopping companies to find who will give them the lowest transaction cost, taking the savings, which is enormous in some cases. It can be 75 to 85% over the standard full commission service of the past. They take that savings and go and are able to invest in software and tap into databases that fit their own particular interests and needs. It's an exciting change. It's probably the one area for home computer usage that really offers a genuine service today. People have been looking, what can we do with a computer in home? There are 40 million investors, individual investors, who as a group own more computers percentage-wise than probably any other group for home computers. And here's an area where they really get a value added where it pays them to use their computer at home, and the only element that has needed to occur is just the education to show them what software is available and how to use it for investment purposes.
John, when you talk about a savings, are you including the cost of dialing up, the online charges, and things of that sort?
I am indeed. In fact, for the ordinary investor, I don't see that they would need to use on online charges. Maybe more than $50 would probably be high. $25 to $50 a month. They'll save in one trade that many times over. If someone has as little as, say, as $10,000 in the market and they trade 2 or 3 times a year, they'll save enough in commission when they're transacting business through a Spear or Schwab or a Quick and Riley, you know, a discount brokerage firm, to more than offset the cost and pay for these services.
We're going to get back to this in just a minute. First of all, one of the newest wrinkles in investment software is a gadget that lets you monitor what's going on Wall Street in real time on your computer while you're doing some other application. Wendy Woods has a report.
Lotus Information Network is pioneering a new kind of delivery system for time-sensitive investment data. Unlike most services, which offer up-to-the-minute stock and commodity data to computers through the phone lines, Lotus's Signal package picks up this data from an FM radio subband by an FM receiver, which plugs into a PC's serial port. Up to 250 user-programmed issues, constantly monitored and changed, can then be displayed in various formats on the PC screen.
Our system is a continuous system so that updates are occurring second by second as the transactions occur on a continuous basis throughout the trading day. Even when the computer is off, our product actually maintains the information in a background mode, and in fact will keep track of your portfolio, including alerting you if changes occur that you've preset to watch for, as I say, even when the product is being used for some other purpose.
This is the brain center for signal broadcast to 12 U.S. cities. Live quotes on 23,000 issues being traded from all the major exchanges come here to this Burlingame, California computer facility via long lines. From here, information is sent out to the equatorial satellite, where it's picked up by 12 radio stations across the country which broadcast the signal. Lotus's proprietary technology, by the way, also allows the data, once loaded into a PC, to be used in spreadsheets such as 123 and Symphony. The product has only been out for a few months, and although Lotus refuses to divulge sales figures, the company claims the product has sold beyond their expectations. For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Wendy Woods.
Stuart, that's one of the newest ways to receive stock quotes. And I understand, John, that the Dow Jones News Service is one of the older ways to receive quotes.
It is. It really was one of the pioneers together with The Source and CompuServe. And now there's another service that competes called ViewData out of Florida. But what they did was bring together the information at pretty high expense to them to develop the databases so that the user could tap in and get this immediate kind of information. In a sense, it all came out of unbundling. We talked about that a little bit earlier. The brokerage industry 10 years ago went from the high commission structure to one in which you could buy transaction services separately from data services. And if you want to take a look at, for example, Dow Jones, what they've done is not only bring investor information together, we're pulling up their master menu, but they've tied things in like world news and sports. You can do shopping through them now. You can book airline reservations. So the individual at home with a computer suddenly has a really value-added reason for having that.
John, do you think this is a good place for an individual to start with the Dow Jones News Service?
It is. It's relatively cheap to do that. Many of the software packages like Chuck's, like the Charles Schwab Equalizer program, the Dow Jones software itself, which has a terminal program. They have a stock charting program, portfolio management, or any of the communications packages that are available for almost any computer today will allow you an access into the Dow Jones News Retrieval Service. And usually when you do that, you get an hour or two of free access time.
John, give us a brief introduction of what we could get in the stock market. I see it says quotes and market averages.
Well, let's go. One of the more interesting services that is provided is a service called Invest, which actually gives you, through the Dow Jones News Retrieval, the capability of tapping into what top brokers are saying about stocks that you have an interest in. For example,
you were... I wanted to follow up.
Well, you were looking at Apple Computer. So we're going to punch in, and we find that Apple has been followed by a number of different analysts recently. In fact, if you wanted to go through, you see there's 3 pages of just the listing chronologically from the most recent report back to the one going back a few months, one of the services. Let's say we wanted to see what Payne Weber was thinking. It's number 3 on the list. We'll go in and ask for number 3, and it comes up, and we could choose to download either the entire report or the stock price data. Let's say we wanted to just get their opinion, Payne Weber's opinion. Now, it could be Beige. It could be any one of the other major brokerage firms who are tied into this service, or through Dow Jones News Retrieval, you can go and get Merrill Lynch research. So what you have in your own hands now is the ability to bypass the broker and to get full value for the commission dollar you spend, because you're going to spend it with a discount broker to pay the least transaction fee, and then you go and you only retrieve the data that you really want and need.
Isn't the broker valuable in the sense that they assimilate a lot of the information that normally, if you're looking at all these results, you'd have to do that yourself?
Well, you have two different kind of people. You have the sort of person who really turns investment decisions over to someone else who is a professional, and then you have a growing cadre of people who are computer users, by the way, who like to do things for themselves. But what they haven't had available until recently was the tools to do that. Now what they have through Dow Jones or through the Standard & Poor's Market Scope, these services, is they can access real-time, same data at the same time that a broker or another professional can. So if they're really interested in doing it themselves, now they can do it. And it's exciting because you can sit at home and be part of the international financial community on an equal footing with anybody who's been in the business
Chuck,
for a long time.
you are a broker now. How much money can I save by using these kinds of services and investing online?
Well, this kind of approach to the business has a radically different economics to it than the traditional approach to the business. This is the branch. All of those PCs have been sold, can be branches, and since we don't have the costs associated with a physical plant somewhere, our commissions tend to be 85 to 90% of those you would charge to the traditional kind of discount broker, and somewhere around 25 to 30% of what you'd pay the full cost brokers.
So in other words, we're paying even less than we would a discount broker because, as you say, the PC becomes your branch in a sense.
Right. That's right. I would like to, in listening to where our industry is going,
Sure.
something I really like to point out is that this system appears to threaten the way brokerage services are traditionally delivered. But if you have a broker who gives you advice and you make money with it, you have found the most valuable resource in the business, and that's somebody you really ought to hang on to.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to have to take a break in just a minute. We'll be right back. We're going to take a look at a $49 program that gives you numbers and charts that maybe will help you pick a winner on Wall Street, so stay with us. Joining us now in the studio is Richard Carlin. Richard is chairman and CEO of Telescan Incorporated of Houston, Texas. And back with us is John Frierson, president of Investek. Gary?
Richard, I'd like to take a look right away at your product called TelescanAnalyzer. Good?
Yes. Our product allows a person to retrieve historical stock information and display it on the screen very rapidly. We can get any graph of any stock and display it on the screen in less than 15 seconds. This just shows a graph that we've retrieved from our database showing the history of the Dow Jones Industrial Average back to 1973. And as you can see, the Dow has been going flat for a long period of time, and then in 1982 broke out and has since been hitting all-time highs. However, if we take advantage of one of the features of our TelescanAnalyzer, and that's the ability to adjust for inflation, we can take a look at the Dow now after adjusting for the Consumer Price Index, and what we find is not a stock market that's hitting all new highs, but a market that is just now beginning to turn around after a very, very long period of decline in real terms.
Now, Richard, this is again connected to another computer system through a
Yes,
modem.
this is to our own database in Houston, Texas.
And then the data is transmitted locally to this machine and then presented as a graph. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, now earlier in the program, we were asking some information about insider trading. Now, suppose I want to take your system and say, how good a guideline is the insider trading in a particular stock? Could I use Telescan to do that?
Yes, you could. Here I'm calling up a graph of Toys R Us and showing insider trading. At the bottom, we have a line, and this shows the history of insider trading. And as far as I know, we have the only service that shows this. What you can see is when it's above the line, you have net buying by insiders or corporate officers. When it's below the line, you have net selling. And as can be seen in Toys R Us, when you look at the history, you find buying at every major bottom, and then you find selling at every major top. So by
Good stock to follow insider action.
yes, by following the insiders, you could make some money on this stock.
Okay, now I think another feature you have here, we can take a look at the valuation of a stock, whether it's overvalued and undervalued and so on. Give me an example of one of those.
Okay, what we've done is we've taken up to 5 fundamental values: dividends, earnings, book value, cash flow, capital spending, and sales, and we've converted it into a graphic representation. So you can take one glance at a stock and determine whether it's over or undervalued. And this shows Kellogg's, one of the food stocks out there that are very, very popular. And this just shows our over and undervaluation channels generated from the fundamentals. And for the average person who doesn't know much about this, in one glance they can see, is the stock overvalued, is it undervalued, or right now, hey, let's watch out.
Yeah, very overvalued.
Let's watch out.
Okay, do you have an example where we could see something that's undervalued, something we ought to be buying?
Yes. This shows a very undervalued group, the semiconductors, and this shows National Semiconductor, and again you can see where the stock has historically been overvalued, where it's undervalued, and again we're finding a very undervalued position right now.
John, is there any software around now that's going the next step? I mean, where we have a kind of expert system where instead of my having to analyze the data, it's going to come back and say, buy this, sell this. Are we at that stage of using computers?
We're at that stage. We don't really have the real breakthrough innovative products out yet in the marketplace, but they're only months away. And what is going to be available are systems which will allow you to put interpretive skills, either your own or maybe borrowing on someone else who is considered to be an expert, into allowing you to go through the screening process or the selection process so that you can pick stocks to look at here. You know, I'd take a page out of Lou Brookhiser's book and say, even with overvalued and undervalued showing on the screen right now, there's no guarantees in the future that those the presumptions are going to occur. But what's happened is that today, the person at home with his computer, the individual investor, has the ability to at least be on a par with any professional in being able to analyze and bring their own judgment to bear. Investing will always be an art and not a science, but with the new exposure to artificial intelligence that's coming into the new generation of software, it's just going to multiply and enhance the ability that somebody has. But what's exciting is where it is today. You don't have to leap forward to see that something like Telescan or Spears Access or the Dow Jones News Retrieval that we looked at or other products that are around, they today give somebody a reason to have a computer at home and to try it out and use it. And the economics are there that you can save on the trading through firms like, as we said, Schwab or Spear or others, and take that added money and, you know, really get these products.
It's going to be my software against your software in the future. Huh? We're out of time. Okay, do computers really democratize this investing process? Can you be as smart as that big-time analyst on Wall Street? Our commentator George Morrow has some final thoughts on the opportunities and the risks of computerized investing.
Isn't it marvelous? A seat on the stock exchange right in our own den. And all through the magic of the microcomputer. Millions of us investing our IRA savings with a click of a switch. And what better timing? The third major bull market of the century. Think of the fortunes to be made. Think of the bankruptcies to come. The last 2 times we succumbed to the lure of Wall Street, it was very exciting and profitable until market bears moved in and wiped it all out with a swipe of a paw. And this time we're deeper in debt than ever before as consumers. There's only 2 sure ways to profit in stocks. Buy carefully and hold on for years if necessary, or be the agent who conducts the trade. Unfortunately, the rest of us lose most of the time, and a lot of it is very much like gambling. In fact, if I were head of the Gaming Commission in Nevada, I'd be demanding equal time on all these computers to bring our games of chance to your den, just as the brokerage houses are bringing you theirs. After all, we're both after the same thing, your money. That's how I see it. I'm George Morrow.
In the Random Access file this week, the IRS is again plunging into the risky waters of computerization. This time, the Internal Revenue Service is experimenting with online filing. H&R Block and 5 other tax preparers have been authorized to file their clients' 1040s electronically in 3 parts of the country: Raleigh-Durham, Cincinnati, and Phoenix. The online filing is only available to taxpayers claiming a refund. W-2 forms and taxpayer signatures still have to be sent by mail. The IBM RT-PC may be a new machine, but researchers at Carnegie Mellon University have been using 25 RT-PCs in a campus network for several months, and the RT gets good grades. One attractive feature of the new IBM RISC computer is its 40-bit virtual memory chip that can provide up to 1 trillion bytes of user memory. A license plate in the Apple parking lot reads Open Mac, but Apple now says the real Open Mac won't be ready this year as originally promised. The new version of the Mac with internal slots is now being talked about for 1987. Microsoft and Lotus have agreed to work together to develop new application software that incorporates Microsoft's Windows interface, and other software developers seem to be lending support to Windows. Ashton Tate, Microrim, Living Video Text, and others say they are developing new products to take advantage of the Windows interface. In our legislative update file, the battle for continued tax credits for computer research and development now moves to the Senate, where the Finance Committee begins hearings on the tax reform bill. The House version currently includes the R&D tax credit, but the high-tech lobby is concerned about its fate in the Republican-controlled Senate. Time for this week's software review, and here's Paul Schindler.
Even if you've never worked in a place with time cards, this scene should be familiar to you. It must be easy to understand. Even the slowest people can use a time card rack. Well, that's just what Paul Heckel had in mind when he created Zoom racks. The biggest problem with database management software is that people can't get a picture in their minds of how the stuff would look if it were on paper. Spreadsheets are easy. Word processors are easy. Database managers are tough. So we have Zoom racks. The first line of each card shows up on a summary. With a single keystroke, you can take a look at a card. Another keystroke takes you back out to the rack. Notice the words look funny. Zoom Racks uses a special smart zoom to make up abbreviations. For example, it says Press Rels Etten. That's clearly Press Release Edition, as we see on the full card. You move around the rack with arrow keys or by typing numbers. We move over to the contact list and assume that HCK is Heckel himself. We're right. Zoom Racks isn't perfect, but it is interesting, and it's relatively cheap at $125 from QuickView Systems in Los Altos, California. For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Paul Schindler.
A French computer expert is urging the United States to put what he calls soft bombs into sophisticated software to prevent the Russians from using the software for military purposes. Thierry Breton says, while it's easy to control the export of hardware, it is virtually impossible to control the export of software. Therefore, he says, the only defense is a soft bomb designed to blow up a program if it's used in an unintended way. The military isn't the only one concerned about the safety of its computer systems. In New York, a company called Dataport is building a 2.5-acre vault under the bedrock of the World Trade Center to store backups for the financial district's major computer users. The Dataport vault will also house hot and cold backup computer systems to take over in case of an emergency. Supermarket shoppers in Williamsport, Pennsylvania are carrying little plastic cards with magnetic stripes on them, but they're not credit cards. They're a new computerized tool for market researchers to find out what people are buying. Each time the customer checks out of the supermarket, the card is inserted and records the customer's actual purchases. Researchers say this new computerized system is far more accurate than the old diary system. In one test, comparing the computerized results with diary results, only 1/3 of the consumers who said they had bought Kellogg's Frosted Flakes had actually bought them. I thought they'd be lying in the other direction. That's it for this week's Chronicles. We'll see you next time.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by a grant from AFIPS, the American Federation of Information Processing Societies. AFIPS, sponsors of OAC 86, the nation's leading conference on business technology. For conference information, call 800-OAC-1986. Exploring today's business solutions. Additional funding is provided by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte. Byte's detailed technical articles on new hardware, software, and languages cover the latest in microcomputer technology worldwide. Byte, the international standard.